think for us, underfueling is probably more prominent. I don't think all of our athletes and parents understand the demand that it has on our body and how they need to fuel themselves properly.
Welcome to the Inner Athlete Podcast. I'm your host, Trent, and this is the show where we dive into all things youth athlete development, strength and conditioning, and the mindset needed to thrive on and off the field. Whether you're a parent looking to support your child's athletic journey, a coach seeking fresh insights, or an athlete ready to take your game to the next level, you're in the right place. Before we jump in, make sure to hit that subscribe button to stay updated on our latest episodes. If you enjoy the show, please give us a like, share it with your friends, and help us reach even more people who can benefit from these insights. Together, we can empower the next generation of athletes to perform at their best. Now, let's get into it. Welcome back to the Inner Athlete Podcast. I have another special guest. I always say that all our guests are very special because I think it's interesting because they all have that work in their own domains. So we've like osteos, physios, strength and conditioning coaches in various sports. But we've got cheerleading. Cheerleading is probably one of the biggest sports that's going to be on the Olympic stage. I know you're excited for it as well. So this is Emma. She is the head coach at Bullet Cheerleading, which is just down the road from us. Very convenient. Emma, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you? Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming on board. This is really cool. I know we've known each other for about a year now. Mm-hmm. Conversations to and fro, working with one of your athletes as well, little Indy. I know she loves this type of stuff as well.
Yeah.
She loves being showcased, especially in sport.
Definitely.
Yeah. So we're here to talk about cheerleading more specifically, and just to get the physical demands and what cheerleading is about. And I think the first question is, what is cheerleading? Because everyone has their own conception of it or perception of it. They look at the NFL, the NBA, and college football. What is cheerleading in terms of more the competitive side?
So the competitive side, what I do is more of a mixture of like gymnastics and dance. So we do a lot of tumbling, we do jumps, we do a dance portion, and then we also do stunting. So it's where people get lifted into the air. So a little different to the cheerleading you see on TV with the pom-poms and everything.
Yep.
But super fun.
Yeah. So it's, I guess, a higher degree of athleticism.
Yes.
Yeah, and then when you compare it to like cheerleading with it's like the NRL, where they're more dancers than anything.
Yeah, they're
not really actually like doing any like stunt work. Like yes, they're doing like flips and rolls and all that, but it's not like any aerials or anything like that.
No, not normally.
Yeah. So, and how long what's your background first of all, and then how long you been in the cheerleading side?
So I started at a young age in dance. Then I moved across to gymnastics. And then my gymnastics program actually started a cheer team.
Okay.
So that's how I got involved, and I fell in love. Loved both the aspect of doing dance and gymnastics all in one. I've been doing cheer since I was about 17.
Yep.
So a long time now.
Wow.
Yeah. But yeah, I just fell in love and haven't looked back since.
Yeah, and then in terms of your background, so you did gymnastics. How did that help you with your cheerleading side?
Oh, very much so. So I had a great foundation in tumbling. So that came pretty easily to me. It was easy to gain the skills required for the tumbling side of cheer. Stunting was a little bit harder because in gymnastics, especially when you're working on like the beam per se, you have to balance yourself. Whereas because I became a flyer in cheerleading, you have to learn to not balance yourself in the air. So it was a little bit trickier, but I had a lot of overall strength, body control, and spatial awareness from gymnastics, and that really helped in cheer.
Yeah, and then what's your role now with Bullets Cheerleading?
So I'm a senior coach, but I'm also part of the management team. So I coach currently 5 teams, but I also help overlook all the other teams, help guide our current coaches on lesson planning, athlete development, and then I also help the management side in terms of admin.
A lot. Yeah. Okay. So then let's talk about the scope of cheerleading at the moment. So where is cheerleading at the moment in terms of maybe from a state level, national level, and then where is it heading into in terms of the future?
Cheerleading has grown tremendously in the 10 plus years that I've been involved. It's, sorry. My gosh. So when I first started, it wasn't that big. But now there are so many more clubs, both statewide in Victoria and Australia-wide. It's also a lot more popular in schools and universities.
Okay.
Yeah, so there's actually quite a few universities that have travelled overseas to compete internationally. And back when I started, that wasn't quite as big. Our national championships has grown from just maybe a couple thousand to tens of thousands of athletes now.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's definitely gotten big.
Wow, that's massive.
Yeah.
Now, what's the reason for that growth? Is it like why?
Oh my gosh. Cheerleading is fun for one, but it also any person can do it. Any age, any skill ability. There is usually a team and a level that anyone can join.
Oh, shit.
Yeah.
Nice and simple.
Yeah, pretty much.
I think that's pretty good because obviously, I think with a sport like cheerleading, there is a natural transition or like of a skill level that you need to go through.
Yep.
With other sports like football, it's really different. It's like sometimes you have like kids that are really skilled, that middle of the pack, and then like relatively new to the sport. And unfortunately, the ones that are relatively new to the sport can actually struggle to try and keep up with the rest. But I guess cheerleading is kind of like the opposite. They have like it's more based on skill ability in that sense.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Even if you're brand new and don't have any prior experience in anything, dance, cheer, gymnastics, there's usually somewhere that we can place you.
Cool. And then let's look, you mentioned before about being physically prepared from transitioning from gymnastics to cheerleading. It's like, all right, so what are some of the key issues in terms of the physical developments that you see with the current cheerleaders that you're working with at the moment?
In terms of what do you mean?
So if it's the overuse or the lack of physical strength or body awareness, like what are some of the key things? You might get someone new coming in through the door. Say you got, little Tina coming in. I don't know, just making up names now. Little Tina coming in, and she's like, "Oh, I want to get into cheerleading," And then, what are some of the physical characteristics that you think they actually need in order to help them progress in their career moving forward?
Definitely overall strength and conditioning. We do see some overuse injuries, especially when the body isn't conditioned to do the exercises that we're doing.
Yep.
Especially if they're not also using the correct technique in all those exercises. So our overuse injuries usually just come in like wrists and shoulders, sometimes knees and ankles. We do see some sprains and strains as well.
Yep.
Same thing comes from body not being prepared for what they're doing a movement repetitively but not doing it correctly.
Yep.
I think that's about it.
Yep. And then how do they go from I know cheerleading to me reminds me of swimming a little bit. Obviously working with swimmers from a nutrition perspective.
Okay.
How do they go from how are they nutrition wise? Are they adequately fueling? Are they under fueling? What's kind of like the scene and the culture within cheerleading?
Nutrition actually isn't talked about a whole lot in cheerleading, and I think it probably needs to be something talked about more because it is such a high demanding sport on your body. It's where you can train up to 2 hours pretty much non-stop. So I think nutrition definitely needs to be talked about more in our sport. I think for us, underfueling is probably more prominent. I don't think all of our athletes and parents understand the demand that it has on our body and how they need to fuel themselves properly.
What do you think about it? How long is a cheerleading routine?
It's only 2.5 minutes.
It's intense.
But they're non-stop for those 2.5 minutes, yes.
Yeah, it's intense. It may not seem like a long time for a lot of people, but, you're training months and months for 2.5 minutes. Just to give you a bit more context. It's like Usain Bolt trains 4 years to run 9.5 seconds. Mm-hmm. It sounds ridiculous.
It does.
But you're doing it to the highest degree, to the highest standard that you possibly can.
Yes.
But then you also got to deal with the rigors and the demand of the training side as well.
Yes.
And if you think about it, the landing forces... I know you do on, was it your sprung?
Yes, we're on a sprung floor.
Okay, so it takes a little bit of the force out in that sense, but you can have up to 5 to 8 times body weight going through the body just from landing.
Yeah, definitely.
Well. And if the landing is slightly off for whatever reason, you've got a large amount of force going through a very small area.
Yep.
So all the structures through the body are taking a beating essentially. Just think of it like as a constant beating in these training sessions. And if they're under fueling, then basically the tissue is not repaired to where it needs to be for the next session,
Correct.
then unfortunately it's kind of like you're breaking it down. It might heal to a certain point, but then it's breaking it down a little bit further,
Yeah.
a little bit further, a little bit further, and unfortunately then it can become to some degree catastrophic.
Yeah.
And it's where you get like your long-term issues,
Yep.
whether it's your shin splints, maybe ankle issues, and even fatigue as well. Because obviously,
Yeah, definitely.
your training sessions. I was there for one of your training sessions. It's like I can't imagine, because I'm not obviously a gymnast by any means, but just the intensity that you need, especially to learn new skills.
Yes.
And people don't realize how much energy
Yes.
it takes to learn new skills.
Mm-hmm.
Like we send kids to school for 6 hours a day, and you're trying to get them to learn, I don't know how much content, but it's a lot of content.
Yeah, it is.
And it takes a lot of energy to learn that.
Yep.
But then you got to add a physical component with a mental component.
Yep.
And so the skill and the movement,
Mm-hmm.
combine that together, it's still going to take a lot of energy for them to actually to be able to work on that and develop it and be able to get enough repetitions.
Yep.
In order to help master it over time. So
yeah, that's the key point. Is so many repetitions are needed to be able to master the skill before we put it into a routine.
And then once they get later on down the track, then it becomes, I guess, not effortless, but it doesn't require as much effort.
Yes.
Because they've practiced it so many times
correct.
as well. So then they don't need to use as much energy. They can use it sparingly to somewhere else in that case as well. Then you'll be like, all right, team, we're going to learn this skill today.
Yep. Try something harder.
Yeah, exactly. You've got to continue to build that process.
Absolutely.
And that's where the nutrition really becomes a big important part
it
of
does.
that as well. How do they go in terms of like, what's the culture in terms of like doing like warm-ups, their own warm-ups and, activation work? What's the culture like with the team?
They don't really do it by themselves, but we do a pretty strict warm-up every training session. So we've been working with a physiotherapist the last couple of years to help us change up and implement a warm-up that does a little bit more work towards injury prevention and prehab stuff. So it spends about 20 minutes of a warm-up every training working on that stuff. But in terms of them doing it by themselves at home, it's not very common.
Yeah, and I think if those are looking to go to the elite level, at the early ages, you can get away with it. You don't need to do too much. But as you get older and older, because you expect more demands from your body, unfortunately, you're going to have to put in more.
Yeah, and the higher and the levels you go as well. Skills
Correct.
become harder.
Yeah, so you look at the top elite athletes, and they could spend, 30, 45 minutes just warming up.
Yeah.
Before they actually be like, all right, let's actually get into it as well. So I think the main thing is, like, the parents and the athletes listening to this is like, are you actually adequately recovering from your sessions?
Yes.
Are you, say you're getting some fuel on board straight after your training sessions? Are you having dinner? What's your dinner? What does your dinner plate look like? Are you eating well during the day, during the week?
Yep.
Are you just being consistently consistent in what you need to do moving forward, whether it's from a training side or a nutrition side as well.
Absolutely.
Cool. And then what are some of the areas for improvement in cheerleading? So we spoke about the growth side of it as well, and obviously, trying to change people's minds or the perception of it. Where do you see the improvement in cheerleading moving forward? Where do you think it will be to like catch up to, like, I've seen, we see all the documentaries on Netflix about all the cheerleading teams over there. How does Australia get to, a standard like that?
Oh gosh. I think we need a bit more focus on some strength and conditioning during trainings. And I also think we need maybe a bit more focus on some mental health for our athletes.
Okay.
I definitely think the nutrition side needs to be talked about a bit more and worked on. I just think a better overall understanding of what the sport is for both athletes and parents, to then work on things outside of training as well as inside of training to then grow it and become what it should be.
Do you think the parents kind of like don't understand the physical demands of the sport?
Potentially, yeah. Especially if they haven't done, say, something similar in the past, like gymnastics or dance.
Yep.
They might not understand how physically demanding it can be.
Yeah. And then what do you think is going to be the key thing to get that message across to these parents?
I think just education, listening to the coaches, listening to their own athletes. If something has come up, for example, maybe a niggling injury or something, making sure they're then going to see the correct people. If your athlete says they're really quite tired after training, maybe looking at their nutrition and recovery as well. Yeah.
Just looking at everything else outside to see if we're actually overloading.
Correct. Yeah.
And then the other thing you might get as well is some of your cheerleaders will actually do two sports
Yes.
as well. How do they go with maintaining their training load?
Some are fine. Some do struggle a little bit. So again, I think it's just knowledge on how much they're doing, how much it's impacting their body, and if it's overloading them too much or if they're able to cope well enough.
Yeah. And then what do you see in terms of the juniors that are coming up as well? So what's the youngest group that you work with at the moment?
My youngest I coach is 5.
5. So with the 5, I guess the 5 to 9-year-olds versus like the 10 to 13-year-olds, do you see there's a lack of development that you've seen? Because obviously you've been cheerleading, coaching for quite a while. Do you think there's key areas that are specifically missing from the development side of working with those 5-year-olds? Like, are they specializing too early, or I guess I'm not really making much sense here, but hopefully you're picking up what I'm putting down.
Yeah, I am.
Do you think they're just like highly specialized and focusing on one thing too much, or do you encourage them to participate in other sports or to do other things outside of cheerleading?
I always encourage them to do multiple sports. It definitely helps build overall strength and conditioning and coordination for them. I think at 5 years old, I just try and make it fun.
Yeah.
For them, they just need to find something that they really love and enjoy, and then they can build on it from there.
Yeah, and then I guess let's look at the flip side. So obviously we've spoken about the athlete. How do you go about, managing the expectations? So you've got some mums that are just like, you've seen like dance mums or something like that. They're kind of like that in that sense. They're very like, I guess, like a tiger mom, managing it from that perspective. Mm-hmm. How do you go with like, working with those parents and their kids as well?
I guess I try and be really honest with them. I tell them where their kid's at, where I see them going, and I guess if they're doing too much or too little, I just try and manage it from a point of like, well, it is the child's life and it's what they would like to do. And yeah,
just maybe just do some goal setting with them.
Yeah, definitely some goal setting would be good. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the one thing that I've noticed with the swimmers that I've worked with, some of them set like stupidly high expectations. It's like, you do fitness testing, they get a PB, and it's like, oh, it's not good enough. I'm like, not good enough.
It's great.
In compared to what? It's like you're making progress in the right direction.
Exactly, yeah.
Isn't that what really matters at the end of the day?
Yeah,
like,
progress is a big thing.
Yeah, and then how do you get the consistency side? Do they struggle with consistency at all when it comes to their training and the commitment, or are they up and down? Are they sick and injured? What's the general consensus across the squads?
Consistency can be hard. We do, especially because most of our kids are school aged, so you have to also deal with school and school functions and school camps. Yes, we do get a lot of sicknesses and absences from that. We also have some family holidays people take. So consistency is, most of the time it's all right, but obviously you do get those things that come up.
Yeah. And where do you see like the future of Bullets cheerleading? Like what's the direction that they want to take the club to? What does Bridget want to do with the club in the cheerleading side?
She just wants to keep growing it, getting as many athletes and teams as we possibly can. We are looking at taking our first team over to the World Championships in 2026.
Nice.
So we're working on building up that team over the next year.
Yep.
So it's going to be a big step forward for us.
Cool. And then how many athletes are you looking after at the moment? I know you got the dance side and keep the dance separate. How many cheerleaders are you looking after at the moment?
Competitively, we have over 125 athletes. That doesn't include our rec program, which is probably close to 30 to 50.
Okay, so it's a decent amount. So about 180 or so.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, well, that's a fair whack that you're going to manage.
Yeah, it is.
And then how many coaches do you have as well managing the program?
Oh, gosh, we have, I'd say probably at least 10.
Okay. So it's actually spread out pretty well.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. And then in terms of their backgrounds, some of them, were they cheerleaders themselves and then transitioned in terms of becoming coaches? Are they from different clubs or organizations?
Most of our coaches are cheerleaders, and actually most of them came from within Bullet.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. So they're kind of like homegrown.
Yes.
Built within the system as well.
A couple of them have moved to other clubs to pursue some high levels that we didn't have at the time. And then they've come back to coach with us, which has been really nice.
Is that because you've got higher levels now? Or is that something that you're going to continue to pursue?
Yeah, we're continuing to pursue the high levels, but at the time they were training with us, we didn't have them.
Yeah.
So they went away to other clubs and did that. But then they liked and loved Bullet so much that they came back and wanted to coach with us.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, it's been really nice.
Yeah. And I guess every year you've seen just growth and growth and growth within the club.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's been really good.
Yeah. Is there anything else that you want to add or that you wanted to kind of like, you want to go over in terms of the, you know, what parents would find valuable in terms of the cheerleading side?
Not really. I guess just make sure your kids are at training.
Yeah.
Read all the information we give you.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid to ask as many questions as you want. But also be an advocate for your child, but also let your child be an advocate for themselves. Let them speak up if they have any issues, come to us with any issues, and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I think that's actually a really good point. Is allowing the child to actually speak up and like voice their opinions.
Yes.
As well, because as we spoke about, tiger mums want to take over, and unfortunately what happens is I guess the expectations aren't met. Like not everyone's expectations are the same.
Yeah.
So what the parent might say and what the kid might say, or the kid may not say at all, but may show, are two different things.
Yeah.
So then you might have to pull them to the side. It's like, hey, what's going on? Say, is there anything you want to talk about? And
yeah.
Obviously, if they do, they do. And if they don't, they don't.
Yeah. We always try and keep an open door policy with our athletes. Let them know that we're here to talk about anything at any time they want. Sometimes I'll take that up. Sometimes I'll go to their parents and their parents will come to us.
Yeah.
But it's really good for them to be able to speak to us when they need to.
Yeah, I think even from the clubs that I look after, I think the youngest kid that we had, I think she was 8 or 9 and she came in yesterday for gym. Crazy, they're just getting younger and younger these days.
Yeah.
Anyways, that's kind of the same thing. You probably have like a really good rapport with these kids as well.
Yeah.
And it's just like, okay, if something pops up or their energy or mood is different, and then you can always go to the parents or just send them an email and just be like, hey, we've noticed this about this kid.
Yeah, definitely.
And it's like, hey, it'd be worthwhile just have a conversation and then potentially refer them on to someone else.
Yeah, absolutely.
In that case.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's probably been the best thing as a coach is actually knowing that you're not going to be the answer to every single thing, because obviously you specialize in cheerleading coaching.
Yeah.
But then you can actually be like, hey, go see this person.
Yes.
They're going to be, be able to at least sort you out in some aspects, and potentially might need to see someone else and start filling in the gaps. Yeah. The one thing I have noticed though, and you may notice this with some of your cheerleaders as well, especially if they've got like low iron, vitamin D, and looking for a silver bullet for some reason.
Yeah.
I don't, and this is just what I've noticed from conversations as of late.
Yep. And
what I wanted to talk to the athletes about, I'm just like, well, you've been feeling like this for months, if not years, right? Do you think a silver bullet's actually going to be able to fix anything? And then just like, probably not. So their expectations of when they go to the GP, they're just like, oh, if I got a cold, I take this medicine, I'm fixed. And I was like, well, that's kind of a silver bullet. But then they have that expectation
every time,
these bigger, potentially more complex issues. Yeah. That they're going through. So what I like to do is actually like, hey, what's actually going on? Talk to the parents, get a bit more background information, and potentially refer them on to someone, I guess, maybe outside of like the traditional medical system. Because sometimes the problem with GPs, I'm not bashing GPs. At the end of the day, I'm probably gonna have a bitch and moan about this, but with GPs, a lot of times is we go there when we've got some sort of illness. Yep. Or sickness, right? They'll be like, oh, yeah, take this. This will help with your symptoms. But it's not actually dealing with the root cause of why you may be feeling like that. So we've got some sort of like, they'll say like, let's get us to take some antibiotics or something like that, right? But the problem is, though, was our immune system somewhat suppressed in the first place? What's the underlying factor? What's our protective mechanisms like? And that's when it'd be worthwhile to actually, get your bloods checked and potentially go and see someone who would be able to understand more than just, looking at you on the surface levels. Yeah. Like, hey, you've got this. This is what you're going to do. Because energy levels, there's a million reasons why energy levels could be low for some of the athletes. It'd be like a load management. It could be fatigue, exams. It'd be good. I guess menstrual cycle that can also play a factor as well, especially for the ones that experience it for the first time as well. Sleep, social media, peers, family,
There's a whole host of reasons
Yeah.
why. But then sometimes it actually comes down to, a lot of times is about what they're actually eating, how they're actually feeling themselves.
Yeah.
Which is kind of the surprising part. And from the swimmers that I've been working with, a lot of them have gone down that supplementation route, obviously in conjunction with a professional, to actually be able to monitor this, and they're actually starting to see some really positive swings in terms of their mood, their sleep, they're just the overall function, the overall demeanor starts to shift as well.
Oh, wow.
Because like if you're tired and fatigued, what are we like?
Grumpy.
Irritable. Don't talk to me.
Lack of energy.
Yeah, exactly, right? Our performance is low.
Absolutely.
Performance as a human being is low, right? So if we're actually, I guess understanding where our body is at, potentially we may have to do a few tests, whether it's like a blood test, hair, whatever it may be, to find out where our body is actually deficient, but also take into consideration everything else they're doing outside, whether it's school, 2 sports. They might be academically, at a high standard as well, some of these kids. And if we're not actually taking all that into consideration, it's like, but because you got all this, plus you're still growing at the same time, you need a lot more. You probably need 2x, 3x, 4x times of these specific nutrients in order to help fuel you in that sense. So that's why quite recently, I've actually been referring a lot of people out to actually seek professionals in this side to actually be able to help them move in the right direction and actually start to fill in these gaps, get a bit more of an understanding of where the body is, almost like a body audit, if you want to call it that, in simple terms. Whilst from the strength and conditioning side, obviously we can help with that, improve tissue quality, strength, power, speed, change direction, all that jazz. And then you're obviously teaching the skills, right? But we have to make sure that the human being can actually be a human, first of all.
Absolutely.
Can they at least be like 80 to 90% there?
Yep.
If they are, we can work with that. If there's anything below, then it becomes a real grind and struggle.
Yeah,
but
and
then,
potentially dangerous too.
Yeah, exactly. Potentially dangerous for them, and also for your sport like yours, for others.
Yes.
Yeah, because there's a lot of trust in your sport.
Absolutely. Yeah, there is, especially when it comes to stunting.
Yeah, and as soon as that trust is, as soon as an injury has happened because someone's tired, fatigued, then the second guessing comes into play.
Yes.
And you've probably seen that quite a bit as well.
Yes, I have.
You need the future for Bullet. Yeah.
Getting as many kids as we can in, loving the sport, enjoying the sport, competing if possible, and just watching them grow up, be humans.
Yeah, cool. Sweet. Thanks for coming down,
Thank you
having
for
a little
having
chat. I've definitely picked up a lot of things from our discussion. But if you really enjoyed this chat and you want to know more about Bullet's cheerleading, where can they find you?
We have a website, bulletallstars.com.au. You can also find us on Instagram and Facebook, Bullet Allstars.
They're very busy on Instagram. I definitely see that as
yes.
well. Until the next one, thanks. You have just listened to the Inner Athlete podcast. Be sure to subscribe to stay up to date with the release of weekly episodes. Be sure to follow us on Facebook and Instagram to get great tips on all things youth athlete development and youth mentoring.